Welcome to another episode of The Second Coming. I'm your host, Jason Keeton. I'm here with Brother T. Brother T, how's it going today?
Man, it's going great. This is our first episode of our second year of this.
Happy anniversary,
of the second coming, right? No one left to crucify.
Love it, love it, love it. So, and for our community, you can like, share, subscribe. That's free. Otherwise, if you want to take the next step, you can subscribe on a Substack. You can join the community there or support.truethought.org. We love having your involvement, however that fits for you. So we love it. Thank you for joining us here today. Episode 1, Season 2.
That's right.
Well, today, my question... I like, we got some feedback from the people at Toledo Yoga, so I went back to them and I pulled some more, and I got a really good one here. So it's about shadow work and the return of the divine masculine. So we've talked about the feminine shift before in previous, how the entire earth vibration is becoming a little bit more feminine, I believe you've talked about in the past, Brother T. But this question is specifically about healing the wounded masculine and balancing it with the divine feminine. Do you want to discuss that issue?
Sure. Yeah. Healing the divine masculine, and what was that again?
And then balancing it with the divine feminine.
Balancing it with the divine feminine. Okay, well, let's call in a little counsel. We're going to call in a little support. Let's take a good deep breath. So excited to be back in this energy and in this vibration of love. And so we are rising in consciousness through an attunement to our true self. It's all about vibration, really. So we are going to share an attunement. I know who I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth. I am here. I have come. I am known. I am in the upper room. Behold, I make all things new. It will be so. God is. God is. God is. Well, this could be an unpopular answer to that question, because there is no divine feminine in relationship to a divine masculine. Because that would be a witness to otherness, separation. Those are constructs of the thought system of separation. We came into this experience because, as Jesus tells us in A Course in Miracles and calls it a tiny mad idea, the metaphor is Adam and Eve, right? So already, before the illusion began to manifest, we could just say there were actually two souls that were gender non-specific, because souls are gender non-specific, because God is gender non-specific. We sometimes begin a prayer by saying, thank you, Mother, Father, God, and in recognition, if you will, of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. But those are also constructs of otherness and separation. And there is no possibility of separation in God. There's only the extension of what is. There's only more of what is. There is only wholeness, oneness, no otherness, no separation in reality, capital R, reality. But in a dream, we can play a game of separation. And so in the game of separation, and what God creates in form is, interestingly, engineered, if you'll let me use that term. God is the most amazing mathematician and engineer. Everything that God creates in form is created with an intention for it to be able to sustain itself in form. In other words, to reproduce itself in form. So the play of masculine and feminine kind of suits the rules of the game of separation. So there's otherness, separation, but coming together as an act, a reenactment, or at least an analogy of union with your true self, right? Is how God created, took advantage of that caveat of separateness to create an opportunity for us to continue to be able to have an experience in form, right? So we have children. All of this is a play, an analogy or metaphor, kind of a substitutional creation of what God is always and eternally actively doing, which is expressing, expanding, and creating more of God. So you are more of God. And interestingly enough, since you've decided to join us here in the game of separation, and you raised your hand and said, oh, I'll go, right? When we come in here, we lose our mind. I mean, we literally lose track of our true identity. And we have a default operating system that we play upon and build upon, and we talked about it last episode, that gets us through several incarnations, if you will, until our soul becomes mature enough to take over as who we are, as what we are expressing as in form. Jesus said, when you see me, right, you see the Father. He wasn't saying I am God. He was saying I'm expressing as my true self. My expression is my true self. My soul is an extension of God, an aspect of God, more of God, and I'm expressing as that self, my capital S, capital T, true self, in form. I am Christ. Now this ruffles feathers, I'm sorry to say. But interestingly, it takes potentially hundreds of lifetimes for a soul to mature, right? In form. Right? So we're reincarnating over and over and over and over and over many, 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 many times. And about 50% of the time, and as it was shared with us, and I want to say through Cryon, but I've read it in other places too, about 50% of the time your feminine energy is the dominant energy that you're incarnating as, and 50% of the time the male energy is the dominant energy that you're incarnating as. And in fact, if memory serves me well, and don't quote me on this, but you can look it up with your favorite AI, I believe when we are first formed in the uterus that we have the potential to manifest as either male or female. And then our body, our DNA can go either way, but our DNA makes a decision at some point. I should say the soul makes a decision and during the birthing process and determines, yeah, I'm going to be a woman this time. So imagine that you've been incarnating as a woman for, let's just say 6 or 8 lifetimes. And then you come back in your next incarnation, your soul is ready to say, okay, I want to have this other experience. We're going to go male again here. And now you're reincarnating as male. Do you think it's possible maybe during that incarnation that you might be a little confused about your gender? Which gender you might be because you have been a woman for lifetimes, right? So that's hundreds of years, and now you're in a male body, but men still look pretty attractive to you because you've been a woman for hundreds of years. Can that explain some things maybe for a few people?
Interesting.
Returning to
So,
wholeness is ultimately the name of the game. And there is, in reality, your mind is split, and you literally have, just like you go to sleep at night and you're not aware of your, this self that you woke up to this morning, and you weren't even aware that you're safe at home in bed. Your mind was split. We can split off a preference for male energy versus female energy, and we incarnate as that in form, and we're just playing the game. But basically, we use these roles, right, feminine energy and masculine energy, to reproduce form so that we can return as form, right? And that we're creating more of God. I mean, that's really what we're doing. So I'm just going to suggest that while those are great questions, and lots of spiritual students, we can run down rabbit holes about, I can spend an entire lifetime focused on feminine energy versus masculine energy, or I could spend some time getting in touch with my true self, which is my soul, which doesn't recognize, it recognizes, yes, you're a woman, or recognizes that, yes, I'm a man, but the point is, it's not gender specific. It's spirit. It's not even form. It is activating form and expressing through your body as form. But what it's expressing is its divinity. It's capital D, divinity, divine self, right? And that divine self is focused on what you are. And what are you? Love. You're an extension of God, but as long as the ego's running the game, you are less than, and do not recognize your true self. You are less than what God has created you to be in your expression, because you're operating from the default operating system of the thinking mind, right? But when you surrender the body, the feminine energy, there's always more women at every spiritual event I've ever been to, because the feminine energy is more receptive, right? And surrenders in the sexual process and in the relationship process. Typically, that's the feminine energy is just more open, literally. Great, that's fantastic, right? And it serves its purpose. It serves its purpose. But our purpose ultimately here is to awaken to our divine nature, our true self. And so we can try to balance the male and female energy. But why is that? Here's my underlying question. Why is that important to you? Because balancing your male and female energy might make you feel great, might be great for your ego, but it doesn't do shit for your soul, because your soul is what is wanting to express as you, and it doesn't need any fixing or correcting. It only needs access. And when we focus on fixing ourselves, our egoic thoughts, and managing this and adjusting that, and those are obstacles to the awareness of the presence of your true self. And you're ignoring that inner guidance, that voice that's within, and it's not being heard, it's not being listened to, it's not giving its authority as expressing through your life. And so you're over here playing with, I'm going to balance my male and I'm not trying to denigrate the question at all. I think it's a great question. But we have to rise above the questions of the egoic mind, because it cannot know. It can only try to understand. It's not capable of knowing the true you. But the true you absolutely can see, know, and work with the ego. But the ego is has the power of your attention and your awareness, and it's keeping the door closed. And so while you're ignoring your true self, you're giving all of your awareness to your egoic mind and thoughts of fear, and I've got to do something. That you're not going to, the ego will not wake up. It is only going to be left behind at the end of this incarnation. And if you succeed in expressing as Christ in this incarnation, you probably won't come back into form, because this is one of the lowest levels of expression. This is one of the lowest dimensional experiences of being God's child. There's way more. But once you start playing the game, it's kind of like Jumanji. You can't get out of the game until you solve the puzzle. You solve the riddle. And the riddle is, you're already whole. You are already one, neither divine feminine or divine masculine. You are divine. You are as God created you. And God didn't create you as a sex.
I wanted to ask a quick follow-up question that kind of relates to the original. Are we supposed to even be spending any of our energy as we look to our true self and our divine self? Is shadow work part of that? Is that something that we're supposed to be spending time on even? Or is that an ego constraint that feels like we're doing something?
That's a really good question. Okay, so number one, there are no supposed tos. There are no shoulds and shouldn'ts. Oh, okay. You got to deal with that. You got to deal with that. Because the truth is, there's no shoulds or shouldn'ts. What can you do? You can sit down and shut up and do nothing. Oh, no, I can't do nothing. I've got to do something. No, you can do nothing. And in the space between the actions of doing and the thoughts of needing, which is a thought of lack, scarcity, a fearful thought, not enoughness, you can just tell that thinking self, get thee behind me. I'm going to turn my back on you, get thee behind me, and I'm going to be present, and I'm going to listen for guidance from my heart, my true self. Right? So no shoulds or shouldn'ts. It's really a pretty simple process, because we just take a good deep breath and relax. Right? So I want to go back, ask your question to me one more time, because I just got a part of it there, and I went down that rabbit hole for a minute, but one more time, because there was something else I wanted to share when you first asked that question.
The very first question from the beginning,
No, the
or
one you
the
just
one I
asked.
just asked? It was about if we're even supposed to be having this, like when we are searching for our divine self or our true self, if we're even supposed to be doing this shadow work. Does this shadow work have any
Shadow work.
benefit?
That was the point. Shadow work. Shadow work is what God has created. Okay, fear is the shadow. Right, and there are those who have been led to believe that, and I was one of them for a long time. That we created fear. We didn't create fear. God created fear. Fear is the shadow energy. Period. Right. So I cannot turn the dog into a cat. The dog is a dog, right? It just is. That's what it is. I can't make it a cat. I can't make it a giraffe. I can't make it a monkey. It's a dog. And it doesn't need to, it's not trying to define what it is. It just does what it is. It does what it does because it has a default operating system, right? Now the energy of the soul that is expressing as the dog is not the dog either. It's expressing as a dog, right? Because a dog is a step on the ladder, so to speak, of evolution, of growth, of spiritual learning, soul learning, right? Buddha said that he remembered a past life when he was a dog, as an example. But the shadow energy was created by God as a squeeze point, right? You've heard that expression, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? And in life, we feel like we're being squeezed all the time. We're feeling stress and we're feeling pressure, et cetera, et cetera. That's the shadow energy's purpose, is to squeeze you enough that you pop out of that commitment to your thinking self and begin to ask the question, there's got to be a better way. Is there God? Am I a part of God? Where is God? Who am I? All these questions. We had that one just a few weeks ago episode where somebody asked the question, who am I? Right?
Right.
And the point of all this is that shadow energy is just squeezing you so that you'll ask the question, how do I get off the planet? We talked about that a week or so ago. That's the question. No, that was in an email that I sent out a week or so ago to our group. Right? So the point is, shadow energy has a purpose of moving you, right? Of kind of pushing you forward. The problem with shadow energy is it's so influential, and it is becomes such a massive energy here on planet Earth. The shadow energy of fear is kind of getting in the way of the intentional purpose of us being here to begin with. And a lot of people are just reincarnating, but they're not evolving consciously into their true self. So as of late, this is a late thing that's happening, but there's, for the first time in creation, God is saying, I'm going to start compartmentalizing myself, and those who are not attaining a certain level of willingness to move to their true nature won't be coming back to, won't have a choice about where they incarnate. I'll put it that way.
Well, thank you, Brother T, for clarifying that. So I know that divine masculine, divine feminine is always a big topic at these yoga festivals and stuff like that. In fact, they even break people out by their gender to enhance their divine feminine or enhance their divine masculine. And I think this would be a good conversation to continue at that we're not seeking separation, we're seeking our true divine self.
I don't think that this is going to be popular conversation for people because the ego is creating a spiritual journey for everyone who steps on a spiritual pathway. The ego begins right away, and it starts having experiences, say, okay, we know how to do that. Okay, now that's, the ego starts to, it wants to, because if you really graduate through a spiritual pathway, the ego just collapses.
Right.
I mean, it's still available, but it's no longer in the driver's seat because you are ignoring it and giving your awareness to your true self. And right now, for pretty much all of us, unless we do it intentionally, over time, incrementally through stages, we can begin to ignore the ego and give our awareness and attention on a sustained level to our true self. And then our true self is expressing as us, as Christ, right? And the ego is envious and it knows that that self of you is there, but it's kind of walled up, but it can't understand it, but it's threatened by it. So it gets really busy at creating all of these wonderful rabbit holes that we can go down through this rabbit hole for an entire lifetime and never move one step closer to the Golden Gate, where our true self is who we're giving our attention to. We're giving all of our attention to the ego's construct of what spirituality should be. And if we get enough people to agree with that, then you get to be right if you're the one that came up with it to begin with. It's great.
Absolutely. You see that often where, a lot of times spirituality tries so hard not to be religion that they almost become a religion in their, because they stick to such a rigid off.
But and you know what? There's no wrong or right, Jason, and I'm going to say congratulations to all those who are where they are. There's nothing wrong with where anyone is because that's where they need to be.
Exactly.
Right? And these are all learning lessons.
Exactly.
But forgiveness is the real thing that leads to enlightenment. If somebody wants to believe in divine masculine energy and build their spiritual journey around that, I forgive them. I see their perfect innocence. And they will learn lessons from the lower energy of separation or the higher energy of union. That's the only two choices. And it is indeed easier to operate and experience the world through the vision of your true self, because you can see because what that self sees is God in everything and innocence in everything. So forgiveness is the operation of the day. That's the purpose of the day, is forgive everything. I'm not denigrating where anybody is, and please, I hope nobody that would ever hear this message would think that that was my intention. You're right where you are. And if you're watching this episode and this is bringing up resistance in your mind, great. That's right where you are, because that's the leading edge of your next level of enlightenment. And so we say, God bless you, wherever you are, wherever you are. Even those that are just beginning to move towards Christianity, that's right where they need to be. At least they're moving towards God. And no matter where you find yourself, when you get to a place of knowing, then you will know. But until you get to the knowing part, if you're operating from an egoic construct of doubt and making shit up, or agreeing with the mutually agreed upon definitions of what everybody else thinks, then you're operating in doubt, which is lower energy. But the world's the lessons you're going to get the lesson either way. But one miracle, which is a shift of perception out of the mind of fear into the mind, if you will, or the flow of the voice of God, which is your true self, that one miracle can save 1,000 years toward your enlightenment. So our purpose here at the second coming, no one left to crucify. We're not trying to crucify anybody. Wherever you are is exactly where you need to be. But we're just trying to maybe shine a little bit of light that there is another way of seeing things, and that is if you focus on forgiveness, if you focus on not specialness, if you focus on not judgment, if you focus on quieting the mind and allowing yourself to be gifted with the presence, recognizing the presence of your true self, which is already there. It's not like you're fixing something or something's happening to you. You're really just kind of getting out. The ego has just to get out of the way of it. It's already there. You are eternal. You're already existing in this body that is your form, and it exists in your heart. It is your soul. It is your true self.
Thank you, Brother T. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us here today. You can support us right here at support.truethought.org. Like, share, subscribe on YouTube, Substack. That's all free. Thank you for joining us. Keep your questions coming in. That makes my job so much more enlightened, because I can take all of the community's voice and we can present it to Brother T and dispel things that were comfortable before, and we get to open our minds. So thank you, Brother T, for opening our mind, opening our hearts, and showing us the path of love.
It is my sincere pleasure. I love you, Jason, and I love you all. Thank you so much for being a part of True Thought. God bless.
Thank you, and I will see you next week on another episode of The Second Coming.